In America, the Beautiful, it talks about confirming thy soul and self-control. Here's what's wrong with America. People aren't taking care of their own lives, are not managing their own lives because they don't have the character and the integrity taught to them and the spiritual values to inform this. And because they're not managing their own lives, there's going to be an entity that's going to step in. If someone has an elderly family member who can no longer care for themselves, they have a family meeting and they take over the rights of this particular person, and the person may resist it, but it's got to be done because the person can't take care of themselves. If American citizens will not take care of their own lives, what will happen and what has happened is the government will step in and become the arbiter of all things. We have ceded our autonomy to the various manifestations of statism, and it goes back to it's not just about the encroaching power. We can blame it on the state, this tyrannical state, but where it comes from is people unwilling to take ownership and responsibility for their own lives.
It does boil down to the individual, and my plan was to recreate Liberty villages, low-cost housing, own tracts of land, populated. We've got a lot of existing farms and ranches out there, and they're not able to make a living under the conditions that have been set up for them. And I'd like to put veterans back to work on the farms and ranches, and have the farmers and ranchers teaching people how to get back to nature. If we can grow our own food and generate our own power from what God gave us, the wind and sun, what do we need government or banks for?
Well, it's true, and we talk about being, for instance, we talk about the dependence on foreign oil and how we need greater self-sufficiency here in this country. Well, I don't know why people can't take that down to the basic building block of society, which is individual. And that's the great difference you see between this country, our revolution, and the French Revolution. The French Revolution was about this collective idea of liberty, equality, and fraternity. Our revolution was about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And if you really study that concept of happiness, the use of a word that's actually code going back to the writings of Locke, who talks about life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. And it goes into the whole idea of property rights, individual ownership, individual management of life, and therefore we don't need necessarily a government. Government should do only what only government can do. The problem we have now is government is doing a lot of things that they don't need to do because we could do them for ourselves, but people refuse to do it.
I've got a link up on my site to Obama's. He's talking about how the rural properties, rural communities, are the basis and present tremendous economic potential, and that's why he wants the government to move in instead of supporting the individual to become more self-sufficient, to generate more power, to grow more food, rather than the ninth plank on the Communist Manifesto, which is corporate farms. How do we get back to the, back before, during the Depression, in this time period that your book discusses, especially down in Texas, more than probably 40% of the people lived and worked on farms and ranches, didn't they?
Yeah, and you make a very good point, because we think of, I'm actually speaking this Sunday at our church on the harvest, so I can sort of going into this farm and agricultural metaphor, which is throughout Scripture, because it was an agrarian world in which these prophets and, of course, Jesus and the apostles walked. And this idea of farming is extremely important. We take it for granted. I mean, I'm a kid of the suburbs. I go to the store, that's where the food is. And it's very easy to not understand where it comes from. It goes back to the idea of self-sufficiency, and it goes back to the idea of individual versus the collective. And you bring up the Communist Manifesto, and you go into the works of Marx and Engels, and it was all about the group. It was all about the collective. It was all about the big picture, the greater good, the general will, as Rousseau would have talked about it.
We could just call it the board, couldn't we? Couldn't we just call it the board?
Yeah, or the horde, or the mass of humanity, exactly. And rugged individualism, the idea of individualism, is getting lost more and more and more and more. I mean, we want individualism for the esteem. Everybody wants self-esteem, but the old joke is you're special just like everyone else. But we want self-esteem, but we don't want individualism for the personal responsibility. We still want the government to have to provide certain things for us.
Well, government does have some use, and it's outlined pretty well in the Constitution. What puts change on the government, the Bill of Rights is really what belongs to the people. That gives you the freedom to worship as you want and to associate with you who you want. I see the importance of my concept of villages. Turning a ranch into a village is merely extending the family that used to work the farm. And if we can put the ranchers and the farmers together with homeless veterans who've already served this country, I think we've got I think that provides some sort of an answer to everything that's going on.
I think it's an interesting concept. I think you're dealing with a couple things at the same time, and one with great compassion about the homeless vets. And I think that's one of the great continuing travesties and tragedy in our American society. And I think that what you say is very, very interesting.
Well, more of my brothers had volunteered the same time period I did for Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't go.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't go. They tried to kill me before I got there. But
mm-hmm.
more Vietnam veterans have committed suicide when they got home than were killed in Vietnam, and I think that's a national tragedy. So we're putting on an event in Arizona for the veterans. The Go No Homeless Vets, and we're working with the Cochise County Sheriff's Department of Cochise County, Chamber of Commerce, Harley-Davidson dealers in 3 cities. And folks, keep an eye out for that. It's up on freeamerican.com along with this interview. And yeah, I think you really captured an important segment of time. I mean, we were just getting under the banksters here, and there were the critics were saying, "Hey, now you know depressions can be controlled and created," and of course, one was. How can the Church of Christianity stand against this? I just had people on talking about the whole Muslim situation. You mentioned Dearborn, Michigan. I understand that you're praying in the streets in Dearborn and attacking and even charging Christians for trying to come into one of their meetings. Of course, the guest that I had on the other day and the friends I have here have been to these Muslim countries and Libya and places like that, and they don't paint a very pretty picture of this form of religion. Now again, back 150 years ago, Albert Pike, Master Mason, author of Morals and Dogma, predicted 3 world wars. He's right about 2, and the third one he said would be with the Muslims. Are you aware of all of that?
Well, I'm certainly aware of the history of the world wars, and I'm certainly aware of the great threat. I think it is the great security threat to our world, and much less to our country, is the threat of Islamism. And I've pulled no punches on it. Here in this D.C. area, I was one of the leading opponents of the expansion of the Saudi-funded Islamic Academy here in our community that was expanding on the same site where a Christian school was not allowed to expand 25 years ago by the same council. And I see these things in terribly sinister terms. I believe in religious liberty, but this is a group who want to impose Sharia law, which would, ipso facto, basically replace the Constitution of the United States for all practical and literal purposes in this country, which should be a repugnant idea to all Americans. But a lot of Americans are burying their head in the sand, and they don't want to talk about this elephant in the room, which is very, very real. It is a grave problem facing us, and it's not just people who have perverted a good religion. And I know this might strike people as odd from a minister, but it is It is in the religion itself that the seeds of this. You know, to take Christianity to a place of terrorism requires a lot of left turns, a lot of right turns, a lot of twisting, and a lot of misunderstanding. To take Islam to a place of terrorism is about a two-step process. It's inherent in the doctrine.
Well, the gentleman that I just had on a couple of days ago, you know, says that Muhammad was a murderer. And this is what he induced into religion. It's like you know, my God. I mean, I can't imagine Jesus trying to doing or saying any of the things that are attributed to Muhammad.
Yeah, I mean, very, very clearly. I mean, this idea that it's got to be a morally relative, we've got to see religions all as equal, is not, doesn't hold up. There is a difference. I do think the difference in the ideal sense needs to be argued in the marketplace of ideas and not with guns and swords and bombs. But
if they like that religion and they got their whole little area over there in Saudi Arabia, they can develop it, or they can make all the nice high rises up there in Dubai. They got all that. They got that. More power to them.
The religion teaches them that they're supposed to dominate and take over the world in this name, and so it's there for us to see. And we, as this country, have to face it and have to decide: are we going to sort of take a good look at this idea of complete, unabashed religious liberty, or are there limits to religious liberty when people are going to use that liberty to take ultimately everyone else's liberty away? And I think that's
isn't that what happened in the Soviet Union? I mean, suddenly the czars painted as a bad guy. They go and murder them, and the Communist Party takes over. Lenin. I think Lenin was I think Michael Chertoff is a Lenin clone personally, but
okay.
I had pictures of Lenin on one side of the page and a picture of Chertoff on the other, and they looked identical. But I mean, you really think about it, this whole new world order, world government. It could very easily be the Muslim religion, as opposed are equal to the Talmud followers, and neither one of them go. Neither one of those religions speak well for Christians, and didn't speak well for what 30-40 million that were executed or starved out in Russia and Ukraine. And how close are we to being in that situation here, in your opinion?
Well, I think we're a ways from it, but I think that, you know, as a Christian, you know, I obviously believe Jesus Christ is the way, not just one of the many ways. I believe he is the way. That makes me a person who believes in absolutes, and therefore, I have to conversely believe that, for instance, Islam is therefore not the way. If Christianity is the truth, then Islam is the error. Now, we live in a world, in a society, in this country, where we're free to say that. So far, the problem is that, and they can say it the other way if they want. Hey, we don't believe in Christianity. We believe Jesus is the way. It's a free country. The problem comes when you bring in violence and force to enforce your opinion on another. I think this thing should be discussed in the free speech marketplace of ideas, preaching and the proclaiming of the various messages. Let the hearts decide this. But that's not what Islam wants, radical Islam, particularly Islamism. It is using the sword, using these terrorist tactics to intimidate and to subjugate, therefore, the various populations of the world. And I think eventually we'll take a stand on this. In this country, you know, if you want to be a Muslim and pray to Allah, hey, it's a free country. If you want to be a Christian and you want to pray to Jehovah, it's a free country. But when you start shooting and killing and recommending that we only be allowed to pray one way in this country, then you're violating what the Constitution has taught.
Absolutely, that's exactly
that's the problem with Islamism.
That's exactly the point. I took an oath to defend the Constitution. I read it. I read the Bill of Rights. every Liberty Village would have a Constitution, a Bill of Rights, and a Declaration of Independence on the wall for everyone to see. And I don't care. I'm not, I've been painted as a racist, as a radical, as an anti-Semite, and frankly, I don't care what religion you follow. You want to follow Christianity? My grandfather, and father were Christian ministers. I believe that you're correct, and that is the correct way. I think the Bible and the Jesus gave us clues and guidelines that are very clear and easily followed. And if you want to go bang your head against that Wailing Wall, knock yourself out. I'll watch. You want to stick your nose in the ground, your ass up in the air, and pray to Mecca, hey, I'll try to keep the St. Bernard off of it. And whatever, however you want to worship, that's protected by our Constitution.
Well, Clay, I appreciate the opportunity to be on with you. I was set to finish at 10:30. I'm glad to stay on with you, but I have to run here. I've got one more.
That's all right, sir. I appreciate you being with me.
Thank you for the plug for my book, The Shooting Salvationist, and for this interesting conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate you being on my show.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. All right, that was David Stokes. And we are doing something. And everything we talked about on this, we are working on. We are going to do it. I'm going to do it right here, right next door. Won't be doing it in Tucson because we have Sheriff Dupnick here. Sheriff Dupnick thinks I'm a right-wing radical, thinks I'm a racist, thinks we ought to let everybody in the whole world come into this country. So we probably won't be doing any events in Pima County, but we will do them in Pendle County. We will do them in Cochise County. And we will probably be spreading this around to do this in sheriff's departments in conjunction with sheriff's departments, with Harley dealers, to bring the bikers, the cowboys, the rednecks, and the veterans all together to have a good time, to listen to some music, to listen to some great speakers. And some of those speakers are going to be like Sheriff Richard Mack, Sheriff Paul Babbo out of Pendle County, and most certainly Sheriff Larry Deaver of Cochise County. I am working with the latest proposed flyer, and this is all still under construction on my site so people can see it and comment. My phone number is up there. Don't call the sheriff's office with simple questions. Call me, and or my brother Randall Douglas. Yeah, give Randall a call. You'll like him. He's not quite as radical as Clay is. Let's see what time we got left. The books are available. $20 to get you any of my books. Buy a PDF. You want a hard copy? It costs you a little bit more, probably around $35 with the shipping. And they'll be signed. Thanks for your order, Paul. You got the PDF there, so you can start reading it. And as soon as I can get to the post office, I should have books to ship you back. David's on there. David will be up on my show probably Monday. David Koss. He says, and I echo this, the old world order is still in power. The new world order is not taking office yet. I think we should take over the new world order. We should take over the banks. We can do that. You know, we can nationalize the banks. We can nationalize oil companies. Russia's done it. Other countries have done it. And how many countries have the British taken over? Yeah, maybe the New World Order is not a bad thing. It's only if there's bad people running it. How about that? All right, let's check on other let me share. See what time we got. Okay, we got about 9 minutes. Let's take a couple of calls here. Hello, 919, you're on the air. But not for long. Okay, you're gone. How about you? Hello, this looks like Ann.
Yes, sir. How are you doing, Clay?
I'm doing well, Ann. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
I got about 8 minutes to kill, so I thought I'd bring you up here.
Okay. I find that was interestingly discussion. And still it comes down to unconditional love. It dissolves all conflicts, discordance, disagreements, and other trash.
How do we unconditionally love Muslims whose religion preaches that they need to kill us if we don't accept their version of the story?
Well, first of all, we drop any judgments about them. And we love them anyway, as they are. Because if you only love people according to how you want them to be toward you, that is human love. That is not unconditional love. Unconditional love gives everybody the right to be what they are.
And wait a minute. I have a lady sitting here right beside me whose daughter was raped by 7 Muslims in a Muslim country while everybody just stood around and watched. That's not the kind of people I'm going to embrace or love. I would respond a lot more forcefully than anybody did over in that country if I saw that happening on our streets. And wouldn't you want me to respond that way?
I can't imagine that horrible situation. My mindset
these horrible situations